So, welcome everyone to the Jury Roundtable. Here, you'll be talking about the finalists of Josh and Brian. I will not be hosting this Jury Roundtable. We have a special guest, Seb, host and production of Distortion Survivor.
Are you getting mad? You look like you're turning into Hulk. Sorry, just had to say it. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so
Brett, he muted you. I was like, shut the fuck up.
so Seb will take over and talk about the Jury Roundtable.
Hi guys, as Sean said, my name is Seb, and I'm here to run your jury roundtable for season 1 of Inferno. Before I begin, I had a little note that Sean had sent me, and I had to read it. So tomorrow at the final 2, just remember that they are people, and just remember that tonight we are discussing Josh and Brian's gameplay, about how they outplayed, and outlast. I know each elimination can be hurtful and sometimes leave a sour taste in people's mouths, but please refrain from any personal attacks. You could critique gameplay, how they maneuver themselves in the game, but please nothing offensive, derogatory towards them as people. Anyone who is here at this roundtable will have different opinions on the final 2, but me as jury moderator, I ask that respectfully that the debate and discussion doesn't reach out to a level where I have to message Sean to mute y'all. When it comes to discussion, there's a raise hand feature. Thank you, Joe, for reminding me. Please consider using that if you want to talk. We don't want everyone talking over each other and not getting your points across. Lastly, this is an online reality game. The third letter in org is game. We all came here to make some friends, and so please do not, trash someone for the sole purpose of the game. So, but with that, welcome to the round table. Unfortunately, I'm just going to ask you questions that I feel is relevant to a juror when approaching the final 2. Yes, ORG is an acronym. Online reality game. Anyways, I only know the information from the small discussions I've gotten and from the VL. So I do not know all of your games and your relationships and your gameplay when it comes to Josh and Brian. So we're gonna start pretty simple. I want you guys to talk about why you think how you think Josh got to the end specifically. Let's start there, and then we'll move on to Brian. Yes, Lucy.
Okay, so Josh had like a lot of false final 2s, I believe. That is my perception. There were a lot of people protecting him because he led them to believe that it was in their best interest, and that and then him and Brian together really hid, their real final 2. So I think, and I could be wrong because I didn't have a final 2 with Josh, but I think there were a lot of people protecting Josh the whole way through, thinking that was their number 1 ally.
Yeah, Josh was very well protected, I think. I think that he insulated himself very well just from like Carval and things like that. And I think that, making the swap, I think he was able to, maintain those connections. And I think that's something that really did help out Josh in the end, is that he was able to, still have those connections. I'm just curious to know, like, beyond those connections, like what specifically did he do? Was it that there were just bigger threats in front of him and now he's here, or did he just constantly find ways to put himself in a better position? So that's kind of like what I want to know as a juror.
Okay, well, if no one else has anything else to say about Josh at the moment, we'll move on to the question: how do you think Brian made it to this point of the final 2?
I think Brian had I think Brian had a advantage in that he had Josh, who is someone that he already is very close to. I think that these two The second that the merge started, there probably was some kind of conversation of like, we're going to work together and things like that. And I think they just kind of like stuck with each other. I think the other thing that really helped out Brian is in him making that move, despite me questioning why he made it at the time that he did, he could constantly sell himself as like, I'm not making it to the end. I'm in a position where I've burned votes. Nobody's going to vote for me. And so nobody saw him as a threat. And I think that's why Brian is where he is.
Okay, Brett had his hands up first, so Brett can go first and then Lucy.
All right. So first and foremost, I think Brian got a little farther than he should have, in my opinion, because of me and Lucy. And he rode our coattails for a minute, which he kind of rode us in a way that was kind of like, yeah, okay, I guess we'll fucking listen to you for a second. And then, like, he had more experience than us, but we both were, like, kind of on top of him for a minute. And then the whole David thing happened. So, like, in the long run, I ain't gonna lie, like, I should have used my my burn on David that night. I'm kind of pissed about that.
Yes,
but
you should have.
it is what it is. But you know what I'm saying? Like, shit. Hindsight, right? So I was more excited to play that other one to show my crew that I was loyal. So I got screwed on that. But I think Brian just literally rode everybody's coattails to the end, to tell the honest truth. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. But that's all I got.
Lucy?
Yeah, so I think that, how do I make this hand go away? Okay. I think that Josh was protecting Brian, and Josh was kind of controlling the votes. And Josh and Brian hid pretty well how close they were. I mean, it was obvious, but it was beneath the surface. Whereas like a Chantel David duo or like a Lucy Jess Kevin trio, like were much more obvious. So they kind of were able to hide beneath the surface into the like subtext of the game. And Josh never wanted to target Brian. So it never happened. And I think Brett is right in that Brian did take a back seat until the merge and then really turned it on, which is smart. I went into the merge with just this huge target because I did the opposite. I also, and okay, so as the jury, the way that we like metabolize,
because you're awesome.
Thank you. So the way as the jury that we like metabolize our own vote out, is like we all grieve it differently. So like for Brett, it probably is very helpful for him to believe that like he carried Brian part of the way, like that's Brett metabolizing your vote off. And for me, I would like to believe that Brian painting this huge target on me, like huge, like got me to target David, then got me to target Josh, then ran to Josh and told the whole game, the whole entire game, the story was that this was all Lucy, and maybe in my head, it's more important than it really was to his game, but I am grieving my own failures in this game. So I would like to believe that him doing that to me was a huge part of his success, and I could be wrong.
Okay, next up is Joe.
All right, so I'm not even going to beat around the bush here. I don't personally care for either of the candidates that are up in the final two. I don't like them as players or people. But strictly from a gameplay standpoint, the only reason that Brian's there is he rode on people's coattails. Josh carried him. Like, if we would have done more Facebook snooping, figured out their relationship, flip wouldn't have happened. Had a bad feeling about the Brett vote anyways, based on how quickly Brian left that call. And immediately I was like, something's fucking off. Something's going to go on. Something's going wrong. Didn't listen to my gut. And because of that, they were able to ride a really easy majority to just keep eliminating the folks that were against them. Like they say, oh, it's not that majority. It's not like it was like an interesting game. No, they targeted in order, like literally people from that minority, every single vote. The only reason that votes went any different type of way, no matter what Josh or Brian was telling us on this side that they would vote with us, the only reason those votes ever went a different way is because of Kevin's idol play. So Brian just happened to be right place, right time. The way he plays is the reason that he has never won. We can see that. Like we all said, even in the survey, who's playing for second place, Brian. Like there's a reason for that. He didn't really make any moves. Josh was controlling the votes. Like he's Josh's goat that he took to the end. That's all it is.
I just don't understand because Brian gave me this huge explanation about why he flipped on me, about like that he could never beat me and like everybody loved me and stuff. But he went with Josh to the end, who's like worse than me. Like
He's just a liar. That's all it is.
essentially. And David told me last night, and Liam's not here. Aaron can correct me if this isn't true, but David was reading me some of the messages that like the vote that I went home, David wanted to target Brian and split up the pair, and that Aaron and Liam didn't want to. And he said they were just like dead set on getting me out. And once again, like, and Josh told me many times, like, Lucy, you being in this game gives me some sort of comfort. He called me a hot topic, and like, which is the story of my life. But like, I feel like they kept me in this game long enough to where everyone's blinders were on me. And then by the time I was gone, it was too late. You know, the shot was missed and there wasn't the numbers or the people willing to take the shot.
Okay, we're gonna go Brett and then Aaron.
Aaron, you can go first. You haven't talked yet. Go for it, girl.
Okay, at any point, all these bitches keep asking all these questions. I need to talk to my professor, and like he's not ending class. But anyway, so yeah, so I kind of missed a little bit of some things that were said, but I do want to put a pin in that I worked closely with Josh for majority of the game, so I hope I can offer some unique perspective of some insight of some moves. But another thing I was going to say is Liam didn't really I feel like Liam and Brian, or Liam and David were really close, and I didn't confide in Liam any moves that we were going to make without the hesitation of David's knowledge. And I'm sorry, I'm like trying to do like 3 things at once. But I think that, you know what, come back to me. I have to think about it.
Okay, Brett.
All right. So basically what I'm thinking is like literally like, okay, so listening to what y'all have said so far, I agree with everything so far. So what I'm saying is like literally I've never met, like I had one conversation with Josh the entire game. So this is why it's so hard for me. Because it's like, yo, he didn't even try. Like I kind of figured that I was gonna be the one. And then, you know, Kevin, you came to us and we, you know, when we had that fucking thing going on, you had that fucking thing because you heard from other people. And that's when I started thinking, I was like, yo, I'm done, dude. Like, fuck. Like, I didn't think I was gonna be, I knew I was out right then and there. Like, once you sent that message to all of our fucking alliance, like, literally, I was just like, man, either somebody on our tribes got a switch or, because there's no way you could have got that information that quick, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's what I got. Go ahead, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, so we're gonna do the last 3 people and then we're gonna move on to a new question.
I remember what I was going to say. I was building off what Lucy had said, which was that I think what made Lucy specifically such a big target this game was she kind of got, I think you got tribe fucked. I really think you did, because it was all Carval's numbers. And then when we did the swap, the only person that I think most people were either in a Carval majority or at least 50-50-ish. And I think the only person that was on Carval was David. And then the only person that I think most of Carval hadn't interacted with was Lucy. So it was just easier to kind of rekindle with the people we already made original connections with and be like, who do you connect with? And if David's the only one vouching for Lucy and everyone else is like, well, I talked to this person and this person, it's like, okay, so I think that made Lucy such a big target in the game. And I think Brian capitalized off of that. And I think that's kind of what led to that weird wishy-washy thing that you were talking about with like, oh, you're making me comfy in the game. I don't know if there was necessarily like one move that made, you know, yes, you're charismatic, you're a leader, you're good at comps and stuff, but I think you really got tribe-fucked for a lot of it. And I think how people manage that within their own placement of using as a shield or whatever is a gameplay in and of itself. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go Lucy, Kevin, then we'll move on.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. And I knew that there were advantages to the swap that I got and also disadvantages. The mistake I made was trusting Brian because I told him about my connection with David. Me and David made this like amazing connection. And
My fault. Sorry, Luce.
what do you mean?
I told you to, you know, I thought he was cool with us.
No, so did I. It's okay. But I mean, I feel like Brian's kind of like an insecure player. And it kind of like came here with something to prove as someone that's been playing. Like he said to me, I've been playing for 4 years and I've never won and it's not fair. And he said, David liked you better. Brett liked you better. It wasn't fair. But what I wanted to ask, can we have, okay, raise your hand if you were loyal to Josh over Brian.
Damn, you're stealing my questions, Lucy.
And raise your hand if you were loyal to Brian over Josh. I mean, I was until I was the only person loyal to Brian, that was truly loyal to Brian. And he ruined that very quickly, you know, and I think that says a lot about who was controlling the game because loyalty is priceless in this game and it gives you a lot of agency. So, sorry, Sab.
No, don't be sorry. Kevin.
I'm not. It's a joke.
Yeah,
It's
no,
an ironic sorry.
Going to what you said, Lucy, the one thing that's really like perplexing to me about Brian is mainly just how what happened, mainly how he played that round. I understand, like, obviously, you know, he felt he needed to make that move and things like that, but I just felt he did it in like a very overly flashy manner. I don't understand why he would work as closely to you as like he did and then just be like bye, like just flip immediately. It just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Why would he throw out Josh in the first place and then like, you know, go ahead and like tell him about it? It just doesn't really make sense. I think there was a way for him to do it to where he doesn't need to do all that, and I think it's a little bit more respected because, oh, he flipped, we can come up with reasons as to why. But I just feel the way that he did it was just very unnecessarily flashy.
And I think his explanation is going to be he was trying to hide his relationship with Josh, but it was just it was a way that made everyone feel icky. And now he's going to in front of the jury and we all feel icky about him. So there was some finesse missing from that move.
Okay. I'm feeling that, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, right now there's a lot more Josh support than Brian support because of, you know, small mistakes made on Brian's part. I just want to ask something because it seems like some of you guys, and not all of you, but some of you guys, you know, have seen major flaws in both players at the final two. So I just want to see by a raise of hands, like whether virtually on Zoom or just using your actual hand, how many people truly believe that they should be at the final two over the other two? Okay.
That's not how this works.
It's a question I like to ask.
Yes, all vote for Jess. Everybody in?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to talk about something that was kind of mentioned towards the end of the Brian conversation that personally, when I'm in the jury for a game, I look at very important. It's how does someone make you feel important? how does someone make you feel like you actually deserve to be, not deserve, but how does someone make you feel like you're actually a piece in their game without making you feel like you're a piece in their game, if that makes sense? Make you feel like you're valuable. So like, this is just an open question, talk about both Josh and Brian, but like, I want to know what your takes are on about like, how did they make you feel like that you were very important to their games?
See, now this is where I get very conflicted when it comes to Josh's game, because after the round where we tried to vote him out, and then it turned out to be Brett, obviously, we then put the target on David, and it turned out to be Brett. After that round, he sends me this whole thing basically saying that like he was really upset because of what he heard, that I was like metagaming, that I was like metagaming and things like that, using like him and Brian's connection like against him and all this stuff. And I felt like an absolute asshole after that. And so I was like, okay, I need to make things right with Josh. We had like a really good call. He basically said like, I don't want you to go anywhere after this, said that we were like in similar positions. He also on that call said to me, I don't want this to be a side versus side game. Meanwhile, he's making it a side versus side game. And then every single time he said that he was going to vote with me, going as far as say he had like this whole like group of people that like he was going that were going to vote with us. Obviously that was not true at all. I just don't understand why he needed to do all of that. Why did he need to make me feel like I was more important to his game than I was? Because at the end of the day, I feel like if he had just after that told me we just can't move forward in this game, I would have been fine with that, because that makes far more sense to me than making it seem like you want to move forward with me in the game and then don't do anything to make that a possibility. So that's where I'm very conflicted with Josh. I think he did some good work like socially, but I don't think his jury management was the greatest. And I've seen Josh in other games like have a lot better jury management. So it's just kind of puzzling to me as to why he decided to do that.
Joe?
All right. So similar to Kevin, I had, after the Brett vote, a conversation with Josh. I didn't feel good about the vote because his name was out there. I, at one point, genuinely did like Josh as a person, had a lot in common, thought that we could get along. Then the next vote happens with Kevin. The idol play occurs. And then after that goes down, they vote me out. And then I realize this man never voted with me one time after telling me all this bullshit in a call. So I'm like, oh, so clearly none of this that we're talking about, like life, whatever, is a real thing. And that's going because I'm a pretty straight up person. Like I told him, I was like, brother, I felt bad that your name was going out there, but people got in my ear. Like people are throwing out there that you won so many games before, blah, blah, blah. And I understood that. I didn't want to vote Josh, and we ended up not. But I told him about it, and I told him going forward in this game, I'm gonna be straight with you. And I was. Yet he was never at any point straight with me. Neither was Brian. Brian and I thought we'd get along due to actual outside connections. The dude, you don't remember it. He has played me before in an IRL game. Does not have recollection of that. I remember every match I play. But he also told me, man, I can't wait to do this game with you. I hope that us card game players can stick together. Then also proceeds to never vote with me one time. And I'm like thinking to myself, even on fucking Incendio, I'm like, bro, what is the reason for this gameplay? So when you think jury management are making me feel like I'm an important piece of your game going forward, brother, you ain't done a damn thing. All you've done is piss me off. And now I'm like, wow, which is the less shitty of these two people that I have to end up voting for, so it's not an even number? That's basically where I'm at.
Okay, next up is Aaron.
Okay, so again, waiting for my professor to hop in this breakout room, but I'm finally in the home stretch. But I remember when you were talking about how Josh had said he didn't want it to be a side versus side thing. Once merge hit, and I haven't told Chantel this yet, Josh and I were fully
Yeah, Aaron
well,
actually shared some of that with me yesterday, that it was not that Josh and Aaron were fully planning to, like, they wanted to vote out Chantel and stuff, but then Brian came to them and said, no, David, and Brian was protecting me. And then Brian said, well, she's targeting you. And then said, well, Josh, she changed it to you. And like, it's funny because I was always the scapegoat in my dysfunctional family system, and I get to Survivor and I like become the scapegoat. Like, it's such an interesting microcosm of dysfunction. But anyway, so yeah, I don't want to tell but Aaron was telling you some of this yesterday. It wasn't going to be side versus side. And I don't know, maybe that was Brian's move that positioned him so well. I thought he would have been positioned well with me. I was going to be loyal to Brian to the end. Like, but some of the like, oh, I want to vote with you, I want to vote with you, I think is just like, it sucks to tell someone, sorry, dude, you're fucked, go find an idol. Like, it's just hard to say that. It's just an incredibly, because I only played one game before this, but I made it to the end, and everybody who wasn't in my alliance was fucked, and it was really hard to just say that to them, you know. But that's not an excuse, because life and Survivor are full of hard things, and it's about doing the right thing and doing the hard things sometimes. Something that is really interesting psychologically about like how alliances work, kind of mimic like an abusive relationship, where like the abuser like puts you in this hell, but then they come and rescue you from it. They rescue you from the abuse by going back to like the honeymoon stage. And so you like trauma bond with the abuser because they've saved you, even though they're saving you from their like mood swings. And so there's a really interesting way that you put people in the minority and they hate you and they're bitter, and then you come and rescue them and just work with them for one vote. And all of a sudden it like trauma bonds you. And I was waiting for Brian to do that, to just, if he had just worked, we were so hopeless on the bottom, me and Kevin and Joe, like it was awful. If he had just come to us for one vote and said, I'm going to save you, it could have repaired some of the bitterness and some of the icky. And it's trauma bonding. But if you go in front of a jury who was trauma bonded to you, they will vote for you. So I don't know. I just thought that's something that I employed, and I didn't face such a bitter jury. So.
I see Brett's hand was up, but Brett is not here right now. But Kevin's hand is up. So Kevin.
Yeah. So the thing that I was going to say in regards to what Lucy was talking about when it comes to like, you know, saying that it's harder to say to someone, you know, you're fucked this round. I've seen many instances in other orgs where people have done that, but they've done it in a very like respectful manner. We're just saying like, yeah, it's probably you. If you have an idol or something, you need to play it. I would have respected that way more than Josh going. And this is the problem I have, is that the call that we were on, you know, he made it seem like I was very important for his game. He made it seem like, you know, he wanted to do everything he could to protect me. The round that Joe was going, he's like, I just want to make sure you're still here. I want to do everything I can to get the vote off of you. And I just don't understand why he goes through all of that if he's just going to like easily discard me. Like, if you have intentions to vote with me, then cool. Like, let's try to vote together. But it just never really felt like Josh actually wanted to do that. And if he was so easily manipulated by Brian, then I guess Brian was the one who should be getting credit for that. And that lessens Josh's game for me. So yeah, I don't think he had very good jury management on that part. He wasn't, yeah, I just don't like that.
Okay, Joe.
And piggybacking off of what Kevin is saying there, it's a respect thing, man. Like, do not sit here, waste my time blowing all this smoke up my ass about what you think you're gonna do. You want me here, you can't wait to work with me. And then don't, brother. I understand when I'm in the minority. I understand that. On the bottom, it is what it is. We need idols. You need advantages to come back at that point for the most part, especially when people aren't gonna flip. Just tell me, it don't matter. Like, I'm not gonna take it personally, but what I do take personally is being lied to my face. That.
Okay, Lucy.
So my personal experience was, well, Josh never ever told me he was going to vote with me or work with me. I think he did when he said we were voting out David and it was Kevin or some. maybe there's one, but Josh at least like made me feel like an equal when he talked to me. And I don't know if that just speaks to him being like smoother than Brian. I mean, Brian said to me, Lucy, you were too much. I couldn't work with you because you were too much. You wanted to strategize too much. Too many people liked you. It was too much. And that like really hurt. Like that's like that's something I've been told my entire life. Like he struck a nerve when he said that to me. And you never want to like trigger a trauma response in somebody that you need like their jury vote. Also, Brian threatened me like 20 minutes before the tribal where I was voted out. Because I know people thought I had an idol, and he messaged me, Lucy, if you come for me tonight, just know there's going to be a shit storm after you. He threatened me. He knows everyone's voting for me. He knows I'm going to the jury. Like, why did you threaten me? Like, it was so like clumsy. And hi, Aaron. Oh, are you just happy to be back, or do you have something to say? Are you just happy to be here?
He's letting me take my midterm. Yay. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Okay,
Well, there was a family emergency, so. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I still felt like Josh, like in some weird way, like respected me, and maybe that was bullshit, but Brian made me feel like ostracized and awful.
Okay, we're gonna go to Jess, and then we'll move on to the next question.
All right, sorry, I'm just like taking in all what everybody's saying.
Sorry, y'all, my phone died. Jess, 1 second. My phone died. My bad. I'm still in. See you guys.
Love you. So overall, my thing is that I do think that Brian had a harder time with connections compared to Josh. You know, I think that him doing things like what he did to Lucy made it harder to want to work with him in this game in general. Whereas I think that Josh was more seamless with it and did a much better time with like forming connections with people. But I think that it is important to note that even though like Brian did play a sloppier game than what Josh did, it's the fact that he's in final two despite doing that and doing that like early on in the game. I do think that they played in a similar fashion. It doesn't appear that way on the surface as far as their jury management, because I feel like Brian's just kind of like more in your face about it. Whereas like with like, I don't know, like hurting people and like his moves, but like he still did them. Whereas like Brian, I feel like his moves were more scorning because he had like a lot of perception, because the Lucy Brian love duo, like make and break up, like that was just everything. It was this whole season wouldn't have been the same if it wasn't for that. I mean, but yeah,
Literally,
I
a whole
think
merge
they
is different.
but I do feel that they both did things to people that were like unnecessary for the game, and it's, you know, I think it's commendable of Brian to have done these things so early and so like much forward in the game and still have made it to final two. You know, like we're all scorned, but he still did it. He played the game the way it's supposed to be played.
But the way that the game is supposed to be played is you're supposed to go to the end with somebody who you can beat. So it seems sort of wasted that he did all of this, but the plan the whole time was to go with Josh, when Josh is just sort of a more likable.
Yeah, I think that Brian's execution wasn't as good, you know, but he still like was able to make it work, you know.
I just don't understand Brian's identity as a Survivor player, because he's just, oh, no loyalty. I don't trust anyone. Lucy, even though we spent all night, every night talking, you told me all about your life and I told you all about mine. I have no loyalty to you. I don't trust you. Bye. Throw you under the bus. But I will ride it out to the end with Josh, who's going to beat me. Like, what is his identity as a Survivor player?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too.
Okay, we're gonna do Brett, Aaron, Kevin, and then we're finally gonna end the question. Oh, Kevin, did you not have your hand up?
I mean, I've basically said what I needed to, so
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I'll let people who haven't spoken as much.
I thought you already asked the next question, so I was just kind of going off of that. But I will allow you to ask the next question because all I want to say is Brian is a stoner. He's a forgetful man. And he told me this several times, and I am as well. And we never had that smoke sesh like me and Jess did. So I'm a little upset about that. But go ahead.
Okay.
Cuts
Aaron?
deep.
Nope.
I got my professor joined the breakout room as soon as I was gonna do what I talked with you, Lucy, about. Did you like address all that?
I did fill them in, but you know better because you were actually there. Yeah.
I can. Do you want? Should I? It'll probably come up another question.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, Josh and I didn't want to do a Carval versus. I really hope I'm not repeating too much. And we were like, Josh was threatened by Chantel for a while because we had all played another org together, not together, like we just played like the seasons, like I Love Money, like franchise. And I like knew of Chantel, and I've worked with Josh in the past, all right, friend. So so he basically was threatened that I get closer with Chantel than I would him. And he was like, okay, like let's vote her out because I want to go far with you. And I was like, I think she has the idol. And then he was like, okay, well, let's just like blindside her then. And then that's when we found out that OG and Cineo plus just Kevin and Joe were going to throw out his name. And then, am I being too loud? I'm being too loud. And then, that's when we flipped and we're like, we have to stick with OG Carval but we didn't want that. And then after that, like we were just like, well, we're gonna get screwed because they're throwing the name out there the other way. Okay, that's it. That's basically, I'm sure Lucy said exactly that.
She didn't.
Yeah, she basically filled us in.
Okay, I'm
I
gonna
just
move
don't
on.
get it with Brian. Sorry. Like I just don't get him.
I will say what Aaron said does track, because when I was on that call with Josh, he did say, like, to me, the vote tonight should be Chantel. So he did plant that seed, and that does make sense. So there's that at least.
I just feel like we were not. I know I was just busy that weekend, and I was being told that my name was being thrown out by David, like me and you, Kevin.
Yeah.
And like, you know, everybody was saying, oh, Josh play these games, like, you know, he's got like blah 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 blah. And like I just didn't have the time literally in life to be on calls the way I wanted to that whole weekend.
Right.
I think I had the fucking smoke sesh with Brett, and that was just like that was wholesome. But you know, I just didn't have the time. So since like I didn't have the time, and that's what I was being told, and I really had, Josh hadn't been really talking to me much, you know, I mean, I had to go with where the people who were telling me this were telling, I don't know, like I am not a follower by any means, but you know, if I'm being told that I'm going to be voted out, I'm going to go with the people who, like, to me, like have the votes to be able to go for someone else. So that's all I.
Question. Who heard that David was
the wrong party, y'all. My fault.
David told me that he wanted it to be Kevin. And
Not Jess, right? Because I didn't hear David say
no, it's just David talked a lot of shit about Jess to me on New Incendio. I mean, he talked a lot about, and then me and Jess,
I voted for that man so much.
but me and Jess like immediately fell in love. You know, like
Okay,
when we met.
let's have talk.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. You can reminisce after. I'm gonna ask you one question that was sent by. So I want to know what you guys perceive as the final two's biggest moves. So like, what do you perceive to be Josh's biggest move in the game? What do you perceive to be Brian's biggest move in the game? And why do you think that? Do you think there are other, do you think that there were other people who had helped them with the move? Do you think they did it by themselves? I just kind of want to know what you guys perceive as their biggest move. We're going to start with Brett, I think, who had his hand up first.
Biggest move was they didn't even talk to me, man. Like, what the hell? Like, first and foremost, Aaron, I love you to death, but god damn it, you screwed me, friend. You were talking to me fucking 30 minutes before I got voted out. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that out there right now. Because you know it. I see you. You know it's real. And you told me I was set. I was good. So just gonna throw that out there right now. And then also, Topher, I never got my second question. You said everybody gets two. Motherfucker, you said, homeboy, what are we gonna call this episode? You asked him two questions. You could have asked him to ask me what to name the episode. I would have said screw. But that's all I got right there. Sorry. Aaron, I love you to death, but god damn it, you played me and that was awesome. Good on you.
Kevin?
Yeah, so in terms of, I think the move that pinpointed both of them getting to the end, I think for Josh, it's like easily being able to evade the fact. I think it's two things for Josh. One, I think it's being able to evade his name being the one that was out there and us not voting for him. Two, if y'all remember, in touchy subjects, who gets most likely to win? Josh. What does Josh say to that? Oh, this isn't something that, usually happens in orgs. He made it seem like he was like, really scared. I don't know if he was. I feel like he was, but like, I think him being able to, constantly say like, oh, there's no way I'm winning the season and things like that. I think downplaying his game is what really helped him. Brian, it's pretty simple. I think just him flipping. I think that's what did it. Once Brian flipped, that changed his entire game. And who knows how it would have gone if he stuck with Incendio. We can never know because obviously we know what happened. But I think the second that Brian flipped, I think that's pretty much what put him in this position, because then he was good with Carval. He wasn't going to turn on Carval. He had Josh pretty much by his side the entire time. The two of them worked in tandem, I feel like, on pretty much everything. And I think that's what put him in the best position. So that's what I would say.
Susie?
Yeah, I feel like I was like one of the only people that was actively wanting to get out Josh. And I'm just wondering, the people that worked with him, why did you guys never want? He won, most likely to win the game. Why didn't you guys want to ever make a move?
Because we thought we could pull him in for a vote.
So he had you believing that he may be useful to you. And Aaron, what about you?
Well, I mean, it was basically just me and him talking about that first merge. Like, I feel like he told
got
me.
mad.
Bruno was Chantel still. And then also, like the first week when Corey made an alliance with like 6 people from Org Carval, and I wasn't in it. And he just told me immediately. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm voting out Corey. So like you don't have to tell people they made an alliance and you're not in it. He didn't have to do that, especially week 1. So I immediately just trusted him from that.
So you felt he watched your back, so you were going to watch his.
Yeah, but I knew he wasn't going to take me to the end, but I think my gameplay was not winning, so I didn't care.
Yeah, and then Liam's not here, so I can't ask Liam, but David said he came to you and Liam and was like, let's split up Ryan and Josh instead of get Lucy. Why was that not a good idea? That sounds like an amazing idea to me.
Would have changed the game.
Well, because for me, I literally told them that I want to get out like 5th. So that way it's like Jess and Joe, David and Liam, Josh and Brian, because I would have liked to see them all duke it out. Like the 3 duos, or like, what is that? Then I'm like, what? 7th? And David
That's where
and
I went
Liam.
out.
Yeah, that is the week you went out. And they were like, we're not, like, we're gonna like basically we're gonna drag you to the end, because I think they saw me as someone that said I didn't want to win, that they were gonna take me as a GOAT, and I didn't want to play as a GOAT. I wanted to see a good game. So I just chose people I wanted to see play. I don't know.
Okay. I just don't know how somebody wins most likely to win the game and everybody lets them get to the end of the game. Like, I just don't know why that happened. I know I didn't want that to happen.
Listen, remember, the end of it is a game.
No, my thing when it came to Josh was like, I definitely didn't want to see him get to the end, but after the conversation I had with him, I was like, okay, he values me more in the game than I thought. We can probably like pull him in for a vote, because it seems like he wanted to potentially shake things up. And I think that just stems back to him just all this like unnecessary lying when it comes to the jury management. So if he hadn't done that with me, I would have been much more inclined to get him out there. But because we had that conversation,
But that's why you never targeted him. So it's poor jury management, but he got to the end of the game doing it. I mean, and then he took someone that had even worse jury management. So
Yeah.
I guess he could have he could afford to do that. I mean,
Joe?
So when it comes to Josh, like, and I think Jess is the only person that can actually vouch for this. I knew I wasn't going to win. I wanted Jess to go further than me in this game, and she did. I think she was playing better. People liked her more. Her game was better and everything. And when it came to speaking with Josh, I was like, okay, this dude's done this a lot. But at the time, I was like, hey, dude likes me. We had our little mishap with the Brett vote. Then I was honest with the guy straight up before, and it did not feel good to vote for him. Like, I sincerely, like, me personally, the way that I am, when I form a real emotional connection with someone, like a real one, I don't want to like kick you out of the game. I want to keep being able to talk to you and everything. So that's why I didn't want to put down Josh's name at any point. I mean, he turned around and like stabbed me in the back, like, of course, because I mean, he's still a piece of shit. But that's the reason that he never had that target sign on his back from me. And Brian and I never, like, as soon as the merge happened, like, we had one call, but after the flip vote, Brian and I never had real talk, like, not once. So he never built that relationship with me, never tried to, never gave me the time of day, never made me feel like I even mattered to his game. And right here, like, that's why the dude's probably getting second place again, brother. Like, you're not, your jury management is poor. It's dog shit. Like, just don't do that. Just be, I don't know, be a human being to people. It'd be better.
And he owns it. That's the thing. Like, he even said, I remember, he's like, oh, my
A
jury
survivor
management's-
mercenary. That's what he calls himself. And I'm like,
yeah, he said like, oh, I'm really bad jury management. So it's like, find a way to improve it. Like, I don't know.
I mean, when it got down to the final four, and I saw Brian there, then it got down to final three, then it got down to final two, and I'm like, there's no universe where I want to, well, in this instance, write down either person's name, but especially not Brian. Like, dude, you didn't do anything like jury wise, brother. Like, no one likes you from a game standpoint or an outside of the game standpoint for me. So that is what it is.
I just want to spend a little more time on Brian's big move. Josh's moves are a little more subtle. There was a little more finesse and a little just more like subtext. Brian has this like one big move, and then the relationships weren't as strong. The people were angrier. So I don't know. I just was hoping we could spend like more time on this. Like, was there a way he could have done it better? Was it a good idea? Like, what were the benefits of it? I don't know.
I absolutely think there are ways that he could have done this better, 100%. And Brian's big move, we know what it was. It was that flip, and that's what put him in the position to make it all the way to this final two. But Josh's moves, he did make more subtle moves, and he did it with pissing less people off. So I think in the end game, that's obviously paying off for him right here.
I think Josh pissed a lot of people off, but he pissed them off less.
Yes.
Let me just cut in real quick. This brings up an important question that, even in the Real Survivor, they ask a lot. Is it better to have one big move or a bunch of small moves that will get you to the end? Because as you mentioned, Brian's flip got him to the point where he's at now. But as Lucy had mentioned, there was a bunch of small moves that got Josh to the spot where he's at now. So is it better to have a bunch of small moves that, could not be particularly seen to the human eye? Or is it good to have one big move that, the whole cast has seen because it was so big, but it's only one move. So let's go with Lucy.
I don't think that any of the moves or the strategy matters if the social isn't there or if it's not better than the person you're sitting at the end with. I mean, this is a social game. Like, that's what happens. You sit in front of the jury and they vote based off of how you made them feel about themselves. One move that I think Josh made that was subtle. So he kept Jess in at the final 3. If Jess won that immunity, she was taking Josh. If Brian won, he was taking Josh. So Brian was at the mercy of, you know, like Brian was only getting to the end if him or Josh won. But Josh was positioned where whoever won, he was going to the end anyway. So I thought that was smart and subtle and put him in a better position in the end game. Fucking lowered his hand.
Yeah, for me, like, I think that when it comes to Josh's more subtler moves, to me that's more impressive, because aside from the one move we talked about with Brian, can't really name much else that he did other than just have really shitty jury management. Whereas with Josh, yeah, he did a lot of things that I think are questionable in the game, but I do think there are a lot of things he did subtly, a lot more stealthily that we still haven't seen. I think we're going to find out a lot tomorrow night about things that he did. And I think that's what's going to make his game that much more impressive. Maybe some of the holes that we have are going to be answered. So yeah, I think having a lot more like subtler moves as opposed to having one obvious move that everybody knew about, I do think that is more impressive in the end, because you were able to hide it better, and you were also able to put yourself in a better position. Whereas I think Brian making the one move that he did, while it's an impressive move at the surface, there isn't much that it seems like he did after that. So
also that his one big move made half the jury hate him.
Right.
So it doesn't seem that impressive of a move when you look at it like that. And he
Right.
will answer for that now. So
Right.
Oh,
So one thing, Topher was having this conversation with me after being in the minority. I was down, wanted to quit, is what it is, about how this game is very similar to a human chess game. And that got me thinking. A chess game is going to be, sure, you're going to remember a huge move, like someone does a crazy queen sacrifice that can put them in like, wow, this crazy position for a time. But the true like master of a game is the person that's going to be taking every single small advantage, fighting for the center, fighting over the smaller pieces, winning in that war of attrition. People may not notice that, but ultimately that person's going to win in the end 9 times out of 10. In a game where you are playing with real humans and real human emotion that people will like take somewhat to heart, like that, Brian has pissed people off. He really has. Now, I'm not saying Josh has not either, but the way that Josh did it, he's pissed off less people, and some of the people may respect him for the way that he pissed them off. But at the end of the day, you can't tell anyone how they're gonna vote, and I just think that Brian's big move really bit him in the butt, you know?
right.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just eat hot dogs every once in a while. So, you know, when I get to the end, you know, sometimes you just gotta fucking put a little mustard on it. You know, put a little bit of that the little kraut. You know what I'm saying? Like, what you got, Corey? Yeah, sauerkraut. You gotta put a little pickles on there. You gotta put it on there. You know what I'm saying? Like, who gives a shit? This is a goddamn game, y'all. Get the fuck off of it. Let's go. Let's pick the right one. Let's stop being fucking so petty.
but
Let's
Brett, we're
play
here
the
to
game.
analyze
Let's
their
pick the right
game.
one. I get it. I know I got fucked. I get it, Luce. I got fucked. But you know what happens? I ain't picking that man.
You just want them to
But
kiss
you
you
know
on the
who I'm
mouth while they
picking?
fuck you.
Bernie, 2020.
Anyways, I'm going to move on to the next question if no one else has anything else. So, I think this was brought up, you know, earlier where someone had mentioned that Brian, you know, was talking about how he's never won a game and this was the game to win. Well, someone else had mentioned that Josh has won multiple. Does the amount of orgs that you win play a factor in the type of gameplay that someone plays or the type of reputation someone has coming into a game? And I'm kind of asking the newbies, especially because like this is their first or second game, does a reputation really matter when they're sitting at the final two? We'll start with
All right, so history-wise, this is my first org game, but competitive gaming I'm no stranger to whatsoever. I've sat across from multiple world champions, not going to be intimidated by anyone's gameplay. Now, granted, when playing against those people, while I may not be intimidated by them, you do take into account that this person has done this before. They have performed very well before. So if you have the opportunity to take that person out in an early state, it's definitely smart for your game. And especially being a newbie, when more experienced players are telling you that, you should listen to those more experienced players in those like game states, right? I didn't, and obviously now look at him, he's probably winning, but that's just something that you should look at. Like people say you shouldn't metagame, you should take every game kind of as its own like universe or whatever, but I kind of strongly disagree with that. I mean, you have to take someone's past experiences into that. And how Brian has never won a game and he's been playing them for 4 years, after playing with him, I can see why. You know, like everybody here can see why, and I'm sure people who aren't even on this call can understand. So it does play a part.
Lucy.
So what I heard about these players' reputations, it was only hearsay from the other players. So I really had to take it all with a grain of salt. And I know in the future, going to put less value on it because I don't want people to do that to me. You know, I don't want to go into my next game and people are saying, oh, Lucy did this and she's this, you know, so just out of like respect for my, like, because that's what I would want. But yeah, it was something to consider that Josh had won a bunch, especially because Brian was supposed to be my closest ally and he was telling me the whole game how dangerous Josh was and how he had to go. I mean, he was like really pumping me up about this stuff. But for Brian, you know, what he said to me after the Brett vote was, I get really insecure. I always feel like my allies are playing better than me and then I have to vote them out. He said, I always play the middle. I'm a people pleaser. I don't know how to tell people I'm not voting with them. So there are some lessons in here for Brian. If he does want to win, he clearly didn't get them on the last one because he came in second in the last game that he played, you know? So, but that's why I say I don't understand his identity as a Survivor player because he's like out to like get this win that he wants so bad. And then he goes to the end with Josh. So he just really confuses me. And I think he confuses himself. I think there's an identity crisis there. I'm asking what is his identity. I don't think that Brian knows what his identity as a Survivor player is. And that often happens when somebody is filled with a lot of insecurity. There is we call it role confusion in psychology. And I could get into that. It goes back to our family, dysfunctional families, but I wonder if he's a middle child. Sorry, let me stop.
And you can
Yeah,
go
okay.
next.
I was gonna say that like kind of building off something that Joe said earlier about these social games are like human chess that you can't control. It really depends on the cast that you have, I feel like too, because everyone always criticizes if anyone's a Big Brother fan, like 16, Derek didn't deserve the win because they didn't like his cast. Well, if Brian was casted with Big Brother
Only
16, he get
child
first
is
too.
what he told me. Sorry.
What'd you say, Brett? Oh, okay. So like it really depends on who you're surrounded with and how you manage those connections. And I feel like yes, there is definitely experience that people can learn, but what's the point if, like you said before, like if Brian's not learning, then what's the point of someone playing for 4 years and never winning, and then someone playing for 4 years and winning 3 times. Well, you still played for 4 years. I played 3 times and I've placed 3 different places, pre-jury, one, and gone on jury. It really doesn't matter, in my personal opinion, because just of how unpredictable people are.
I'm sorry. I hate to ask. What was the initial question again, Seb? I was like distracted by
The initial question is that someone had mentioned how Brian came into the game wanting a win, and someone else had also mentioned that Josh has won a couple of games in the past. So does reputation matter when it comes to someone's path to get to the end of the game? And
I think
how
it definitely does.
And how did Josh and Brian handle it?
I think reputation is definitely important, especially if you know the history of like, this person usually does really well. This person usually doesn't do as well. Like that's definitely something that's going to come up in the end game. But what's important, I think, is there is a way to not let that reputation become the entirety of your story. Like there's a way to put yourself in a good enough position to where people aren't going to fixate on your reputation. And that's something I do think Josh did do pretty well, because I will be honest, after that thing he sent to me, I felt like utter shit after that. And I didn't want to bring up anything in regards to like his past games because I felt like a fucking asshole saying what I did. So he did a good job with that. I think Brian, him constantly talking about how like he's never won a game and things like that. I think Brian needed to, and this is something I always tell people in every single game, you're gonna hear this from me after this game, just forewarning you. Every game is a learning experience. I say this to pretty much everyone that plays an org, and it's true. Whether it's positive or negative, you look at, if you did well in a game, you look at the things you did well, and you try to incorporate them in your next game. If you didn't do well, you look at the negatives and what you need to improve upon. And I don't think that Brian did a good enough job with assessing that. He really needs to think about what is it that I've done that hasn't gotten me that win. And I think instead of, really like looking through it and analyzing what he did wrong, he capitalized on it. And I think that's why he is probably going to get second tomorrow night.
Okay, Brett.
All right, I'm gonna say one more thing, and then I've got to go because I'm still at work, and I've got to get this out. I'm still plugged in because my phone died earlier. So let me get this out right here. Yo, this is a game. We did it. We got to the merge. We did everything we needed to get to. I'm the first one that got fucked. All right. First and foremost, I love y'all. Jess, Lucy, Kevin, Aaron, you're cool now. Ass. Anyways. But anyways, this is going to be my last time to talk to y'all until tomorrow. So let me go ahead and say this. I had the best time of my life with y'all. This is fun as hell. That's it. Love y'all.
Okay. Next question I'm gonna ask is quite simple. There was a tendency of my questions being spoiled today. So just by a show of hands, virtual or not, do you think that Josh outplayed Brian? Who thinks that Brian outplayed Josh? Who's indecisive? Who doesn't know? Okay. Who thinks Josh outlasted Brian? Who thinks that Brian outlasted Josh? Who is indecisive again? Who thinks that Josh outwit Brian? Who thinks that Brian outwit Josh? Who is indecisive? And then last question for this section, who could care less who wins at the end of tomorrow night? Okay. Sean, how long have we been going? I'm going to start wrapping it up, quite honestly.
That's a good question. But yeah, you can wrap it up.
Okay. One last, I'm just going to ask one, I'm going to ask two questions. Okay. First question I'm going to ask, who right now, this very moment, thinks that they have their vote set for a winner of Inferno season 1? Okay, only one person. Okay, who thinks they have an idea, but they still need final tribal to make a decision? Okay, and then last question, who does not have any idea right now at all, and they are solely going off final tribal? Okay, is there any last comments that anyone wants to make about Josh or Brian before we wrap this up?
Yeah,
I just oh, go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, so I really want to be objective and I really want to be impartial. As a survivor juror, there is no rules to how we vote. There is no Bible that we swear on. There is no constitution that we have to follow. You know what I mean? I get to vote however I want, and I get to define that job however I define it, but I want to be impartial, and that's how I define it. So that is my logical mind. So emotionally, Brian put me in fight or flight with how he treated me. And when I come to jury, my response is to fight and to vote against him. So those are the two things that's why I'm leaning towards Josh, because I'm in my fight or flight and I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to finally have my fucking say. But I do, because when I made it to the end, I wanted an impartial jury. And so I do want to give that to them too.
Joe?
They will hear all of my comments and exactly what I think of them as players and people tomorrow.
And Kevin?
I just really hope that between the two of them, like, they're just able to explain their games really well. I hope that Josh is able to give us some clarity onto some things that he said when it came to, things that he might have promised to others that didn't happen. And I hope Brian is hopefully able to rationalize, why he played that round in the way that he did. Because like I said before, I don't have a problem with the move. It's just the way that he did it, I think, was just really not the right way to go about it. So that's what I'm just hoping. I just need some clarity. That's it.
Okay, with that, now I'm going to wrap up this roundtable. First of all, congrats y'all for making jury and making it this far in Inferno, the first season, especially for the newbies and the people who have just started their time off in the org community. Getting this far in your first game is an accomplishment, definitely. And good luck tomorrow night at the final tribal, as they're going to be preaching their games. And last thing I will say, I as a juror, I fully agree with Lucy's sentiment. Although you are basing their gameplay off of social strategy and physical gameplay, at the end of the day, we are still people. And if you choose to vote for a personal reason, no one should make you feel bad for making that choice. Just like, people have mentioned tonight that they don't want to vote for either of them. People have mentioned they're on the fence, and they're okay for doing that, because at the end of the day, it's not like we're playing real Survivor for $1 million. We're a bunch of people on a Zoom screen, talking to each other. So vote however you want to vote, because that's just, as Lucy said, as a jury member, you can find any reason to vote for one or the other person. So I'm going to hand it back off to Sean, but thank you guys for allowing me to host this roundtable.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Seth, for hosting this roundtable. With that being said, that is it for everyone that ends up watching this to the end. Thank you so much for watching and taking your time out of your day watching it. And that wraps up the jury roundtable. I'm gonna stop the recording.